Welcome to the Carriker Chronicles, the People Show. Checking the polls of Husker Nation, brought to you by DPS Concrete Construction. Check them out at dpsconstruction.net. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to be a sponsor to this show, go to carrikerchronicles.com. I think it's home, message us, something like that. Send us a message. Let us know if you're interested in being the sponsor. It's that time of the year. Ladies and gentlemen, all right, today's show, loaded as always. What we can learn from Ohio State, what we can learn from Notre Dame, and I actually think a lot specifically from Notre Dame. Our top 5 transfer portal impact players as I see them coming in. Got a couple of honorable mentions. And who's our biggest swings and misses so far? And who just might be the most important transfer portal player, and he's not one of the top 5 impact players because he's got a gigantic question mark next to him. All right, but if you're like me, and you love seeing other Husker sports doing really, really well, and I'm going to talk about all Husker sports on this show, as I have done in the past. All right, the Husker Hoops. Ladies have just blasted the stinking Badgers. Gotta love coordination. 91-60 instead of Pinnacle Bank Arena record with 16 three-pointers. Shout out to Britt Prince. She's the Big Ten Freshman of the Week. She's really starting to come into her own as well. Spring sports coming up. All right, Nebraska baseball. I didn't write this, but here's what it says. An old team with a very high floor. I guess that's a compliment. Nebraska baseball brings back 7 position players who started 43 or more games last season. The defending Big Ten champs got a lot of people coming back, ladies and gentlemen. It's really projected to be between them and Oregon. We'll see how the season plays out, but in the Big Ten. And I quote, pretty much all the guys we have back played a significant piece last year. We just need them to continue to develop in our program. All right. Couple others. I mean, while we're at it, softball, preseason number 21. Baseball's preseason number 24. Jordy Ball's back healthy, projected to be a preseason All-American. Can't wait to see what she can do now that she's healthy. Wrestling, done some great things lately. Set an attendance record for a Nebraska wrestling match versus number 1 Penn State. They beat number 4 Minnesota the previous week, and they're a top 10 wrestling team in the country. Our bowling team, which has 11 national championships, ladies and gentlemen. Volleyball school, bowling school, gonna be a football school again. Just went undefeated in a tournament, all right, won the tournament championship and swept number 4 Youngstown State in order to do so. Didn't know Youngstown State was that good at bowling. That's cool, though. Track coming soon. Shout out to gymnastics. Fred Hoiberg, let's go, brother. But Nebraska women's basketball has just won 4 Big Ten conference games in a row. And I should point out, there's only one team in the country. I didn't come up with this thought. You'll see who did on the screen. There's only one team in the country when it comes to Ohio State football that lost to Ohio State by 5 points or less. Only one. So had we gone into Columbus and beat them that day, they wouldn't even been in the college football playoff, although they might have. I don't know. That's a topic for another day. But basically, they should be thanking us that they won the national title. As always, make sure you subscribe, ring the notification bell. Our off-season schedule officially starts next Tuesday. I know the show's going out on a Tuesday today. As I'm recording it in the morning before we put it out this afternoon, I wanted to get it out quick after the national title game. But going forward, the plan throughout the offseason is every Tuesday evening, I'm going to be doing some sort of show. A lot of interviews. A lot of fun interviews coming. I'm just going to warn you. Plus other shows in between as well, gut reactions. But every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central Time on YouTube, 7 p.m. on the social medias. So make sure you subscribe, ring the notification bell. Don't miss what we're doing here. I got big time plans for this offseason. Less shows, still the same amount of fun. Stay tuned. All right. What we can learn from Ohio State. Oh, I forgot. If you missed my Levante David interview, it's probably the longest interview I've ever done because it was awesome. It's one of my favorite interviews, and it's because Levante was awesome. Go check it out if you haven't seen it. All right, what can we learn from Ohio State? There's more room for error now in college football than there's ever been. And we're going to put this up on the screen. Now, I didn't come up with this. I'm not taking a shot at Ohio State, but I saw this and I was like, holy crap, they're right. Ohio State just won a national title. Now, their whole thing, and actually I clipped it out, but the whole thing is Ohio State the most fraudulent national champion ever? I zoomed in and cut that part out because that wasn't my point. No jabs at Ohio State. 2 years in a row national champions from the Big Ten Conference. But 2 losses, no conference title, embarrassed by Michigan. Man, that was a bad loss. And finished 4th in the Big Ten. Oh, there it is. I left it in, I guess. Ohio State, the most fraudulent national champion in college football history. You don't need to answer that question. But when I saw this, I was like, man, there is more room for error than there's ever been in order to compete for a conference title, but mostly a national championship than there's ever been to compete at a high level. The last time we had a 2-loss national title was 2007 LSU. They won the SEC title at least that year. You look at the Final Four teams that were left in the college football playoff this year. Penn State, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and Texas. Not one of them won a conference title. All right, that's my first thing, is there's more room for error throughout a college football season than there's ever been to still be able to compete for championships at the end of the year. Number two, NIL does matter. $20+ million they spent on this roster. I spoke with the CEO of 1890 a week ago. Carson, what's up, my man? All right. He flat out said Ryan Day turned into the CEO of Ohio State. They brought Chip Kelly in to take over the offense. Ryan Day doesn't call plays anymore. He just took over the offense. He handed over the reins to the defense and became the CEO and basically a part-time fundraiser. Okay, NIL does matter. Now, I'm going to give an example of why you can still win football the old school way here in a minute, but you have to be able to adjust and call audibles as the game evolves and changes over time. Transfer portal players can make an impact. You look at two of the players that had two of the biggest impacts on the national title game last night. It was quarterback Will Howard, Kansas State transfer. By the way, a guy who lost his job at Kansas State. Now there's some NFL scouts who are like, he might be a first-round pick. We'll see. He had a lot of talent around him, and I love the dude, but we'll see how that pans out. But you look at what he did last night, 17 of 21. He also completed a national championship game record, his 12 straight passes. All right, he was 17 of 21, completed 81% of his passes as a whole, 231 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 INTs. Had a hard time reading my own handwriting. But Ole Miss transfer, running back Quinshawn Judkins, also had a gigantic impact last night. 11 rushes, 100 yards, averaged 9.1 yards per carry against a stiff Notre Dame defense, stiff Notre Dame run defense. 3 touchdowns, 2 rushing, 1 receiving. Now, what can we learn from Notre Dame? There's more than one way to win in college football. Now, quarterback Riley Leonard was a transfer, okay? But not many of their other players were. Most of them were kind of homegrown type guys. By far the majority of their team, and actually the majority of Ohio State. If you look at their roster as a whole, I'll get to Emeka Egbuka here in a minute. A homegrown kid, okay, recruited, stayed there, developed there, could have gone to the NFL last year, didn't. Now he has more receptions than anybody in the history of Ohio State football program history. We'll put that graphic up on the screen now, I guess. All right, I was so excited to do this show because I haven't done one like this in a while. I'm happy to be back. All right, Notre Dame, part of the reason Notre Dame kind of is homegrown and culture built and toughness and from the inside out, set down from the head man himself, Marcus Freeman, to begin with, and then it reverberates throughout the program, is Notre Dame isn't a place with the religious and high academic standards. You don't typically go there unless you really want to be there, which means you're less likely to leave. Now, they also showed another thing. You don't have to be in the South to win. You look at the JUCO national champion this year, the FCS national champion, North Dakota State, they played Montana. You look at all the national champions in college football, they're all Kansas and higher. The JUCO national champion was from Kansas. They're all in the North. Notre Dame, Ohio State from the North. 3 of the Final 4 teams were from the North. 5 of the Final 8 teams in the college football playoff were from the North. I got respect for the SEC, but we're going to put this up. This was a sign at the national title game. You probably saw me put it out on social media, but there you go. All right. They also showed you can still win football games playing complementary football. Run the ball, stop the run, win in the trenches, play great special teams, and be good at the little things. Here's some examples. They're great at special teams. Think back to the Sugar Bowl versus Georgia. The second half, the opening kickoff, they took back to the house, put them up by 17 points, and that was basically the game. They dominated field position this year as an overall whole, Notre Dame did. Running the ball. Their running backs, their top 2 running backs are number 1 and number 2 in the country when it comes to yards after contact. They have the number 2 overall defense in the country. Ohio State had number 1. They're number 1 in the country in turnovers forced, and they're number 1 in the country in points off of turnovers. So they win the field position, they win the turnover battle, they're in the bottom 50th percentile when it comes to penalties. Like, they run the ball, they stop the run. They weren't one of the most talented teams in the country, and I'll get into that in a second, okay? Some of the other things they did, the middle 8. And you may have heard this talked about before. I talked about it on the Adam Carriker show on The Ticket. Okay, the middle 8 is the last 4 minutes of the first half, the first 4 minutes of the second half. They dominate that. That is about adjustments and clock management. They outscored before, in the college football playoff, before the national title game, they outscored Penn State and Georgia combined 27-0 in the middle 8. Ohio State's had more success in that middle 8. A lot of it has to do with Ohio State's overall talent, and Ryan Day's a good coach. I'm genuinely happy for him. Everything he's been through, the death threats, his family's gotten threats, I'm genuinely happy for Ryan Day. All right. You can still compete at a high level the old-fashioned way. All right. The top rosters in the country, it was unanimous coming into the country, who had the top rosters in the country, which to me is talent, your talent composite plus experience. The top 4 rosters, everybody agreed. In no particular order, were Ohio State, Georgia, Texas, Oregon. Notre Dame was somewhere in the top 10, but not top 5. And we just went most talented, so you take experience out. Alabama was actually number 1. They got a ton of young true freshmen that are very talented. It was Alabama. Clemson was actually in the top 5. And then the aforementioned schools that I just mentioned, Ohio State, Georgia, Texas, Notre Dame. Oregon. Notre Dame wasn't even top 5, 6, or 7. Probably top 10 to 15. But to me, you can still win and compete at a high level. NIL matters. Talent matters. Talent acquisition matters. You can still compete at a high level, okay, playing complementary football. They showed that. Here's the other thing. No shot at Brian Kelly, which I've taken a few this year. I just hate it when people quit. Anyways, it's much harder to win complementary style because of talent and transfer portal and NIL than it's ever been. Some people will quit on you, and I put in parentheses in my notes, Brian Kelly. But you can still win football games with toughness and culture. All right, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors, DPS Concrete Construction. They are your local concrete experts. They're Omaha-based, they're Nebraska-grown. Jason Armstrong has a bunch of businesses that he's doing. We're going to start to advertise those on the show as well. He does a phenomenal job. He's a phenomenal boss. If this is your line of work, concrete, etc., go to dpsconstruction.net. If you need this type of work done, go to dpsconstruction.net. Also, Allen Capital Group. I can't tell you how much it puts my mind at ease knowing that my family's finances are in the hands of smart, intelligent people who genuinely care and want to do things the right way based on your individual portfolio and what's best for you. Allen Capital Group. Check them out at allencapgroup.com. That's ALLENCAP group.com. They have offices in Ogallala, Grand Island, and Omaha. Next level solutions for next level needs. All right, top 5 portal impact players. Now, I got some honorable mentions. I had a decision to make. Am I going future? Am I going current? Or am I going to go in a mix? Because some of these guys have a really bright future, but it might take them a year or two to get there. Some guys are going to be more proven and probably produce earlier, sooner rather than later. I heavily emphasized this upcoming season because with the transfer portal the way it is, guys come in and then they might be gone. So you don't know. They might have a bright future in 2 to 3 years. Are they going to be here? So I will say this. Williams and Worry, 5-star out of high school, top 5, one of the most talented players on this entire team. I'd say Dylan, Elijah Pritchett, Williams and Worry. I mean, there's others, probably about 2 if you're going to get to 5, but he's one of those 5. I don't know how much of an impact he'll make this year. He could be huge, or it might take a year, okay? But he's an honorable mention. And if we're going to treat special teams like an equal 1/3 part of the game, then I've got to talk about the punter and the long snapper. Jack McAllister, dude's really good. All right, so he's an honorable mention here. Our long snapper, FCS All-American Kevin Golick. We would have been 8-4 last year if we could just snap the ball. Game-winning field goal versus Illinois, bad snap. Missed the field goal, but watch the snap. It was bad. Game-tying field goal attempt against Iowa, bad snap. We probably go to overtime. We outplayed them. We probably win. We could have been 8-4. Just snap the ball right. I know it sounds so simple. I sucked at it. If you've watched my past shows, anyways. All right, 5th, on my humble opinion, anyways. Top 5 most impact transfer portal players. Number 5, I got Idaho defensive back Andrew Marshall, and I have him in the top 5. He's probably going to be one of our starting 2 defensive backs. He was the only cornerback DB in the entire Big Sky Conference that made all conference, so he's the best defensive back in the Big Sky Conference. And why was there only one? Okay, but here's why I have him on here. His return capabilities. The dude's a punt returner, a kick returner. We need somebody to make an impact. Marshall was also an outstanding returner, returning both punts and kickoffs for a touchdown. He had 9 kickoff returns for 373 yards and 1 touchdown, averaging 41.4 yards per return. I don't know if he'll continue to average that much, but that gets me excited. Okay, and he returned 14 punts for 150 yards and 1 touchdown, averaging 10.7 yards per return. Every time he returns the ball, he gets at least a first down on a punt return. We averaged 4.7 yards per punt return last year, and that was better than the year before. So we need this. So I got him number 5. All right, number 4, Cal wide receiver with 3 years of eligibility left, Isaiah Hunter. He led Cal in 3 different receiving categories. He led them in yards per catch, 14.4 yards per reception, which would have led our team last year. All right, receiving yards per game and receiving touchdowns. He's 6'2", 192. He can make people miss after the catch. We need some big play potential and capability. He gives it to us. All right. Number 3, linebacker Marquez Watson-Trent, the Sun Belt Defensive Player of the Year. So we have the best defensive player from the Sun Belt, the best DB from the Big Sky Conference, I understand these are smaller conferences, but Indiana showed that you could play. By the way, Indiana's only 2 losses this year were to Notre Dame and Ohio State. I don't know. I'm not gonna sit here and pound the wall for Kurt Cigarette, but you get my point. All right, they can help us get better. All right, this dude's a tackling machine. Over 350 career tackles, averaged nearly 120 tackles each of the last 3 seasons, hundreds of snaps played, immediate potential impact type player. Not a shot at Stephon Thompson at all. Wish him the best, but I believe he's going to be what I and some other folks that hoped Stephon Thompson would be last year. I believe Marquez Watson-Trent can be that next year. All right, Dawson McCullough, probably the most talented defensive player we brought in, 6'5", 235 pounds. The number 43 overall player in the country when he was coming out of high school. He can play inside backer, outside backer, rover. He can rush the passer. He can drop into coverage. He can play everywhere. Probably John Butler's ultimate chess piece on defense. I've talked about Holgorsen doing that with some guys on offense like Harburg. This might be John Butler's ultimate chess piece on defense is Dawson McCullough. Watch him against Texas and Oklahoma last year. Jumps off the screen. All right. And Indiana is a true freshman. He was all Big Ten type honors, freshman All-American, led the team in sacks. All right, and now, full scope of everything. He's transferred a couple times. He's battled some injuries, but I am excited to see what he can do next year. Number 1, former Kentucky wide receiver Dane Key. He was their best receiver. He'd probably be a top 3 round pick if he went to the NFL right now. Biggest upside and most proven player combination of any guy in the transfer portal coming into Nebraska, which is why I have him number 1. Kentucky had bad quarterback play last year. They were like, 4-7, something like that. That doesn't add up to 12. 4-8. I think they had 4 wins, so 4-8. Okay, 6'3", 210 pounds, great route runner. We need guys who can make big plays, guys who can get open. Teams last year just man-to-man across the board, blitz the house. Dylan doesn't really want to run. He would at times, but he doesn't want to. We'll lock him up man-to-man. We couldn't do anything. We need guys who can get open and beat man-to-man specifically as well. All right, I mentioned this before when I talked about it in previous shows, but coming out of high school, he was named the best football player in the state of Kentucky coming out of high school. Not very common for a wide receiver. Wan'Dale Robinson, I think, had that years ago. Mr. Football in the state of Kentucky or something. He's doing all right. All right, let's see. I think I covered all that. Oh, one last thing. Average 15.2 yards per reception. All right, and Isaiah Hunter, average, I think it was 14.4. Both those guys are upgrades when you think about the fact that last year Nebraska averaged only 7 yards per pass attempt. All right. Our biggest misses in the portal. Offensive line. I don't feel like going through them all. We have missed experienced offensive linemen, smaller conference, all-conference type offensive linemen. We've missed out on them. Now, it's a long offseason. I guarantee we add more players, probably more offensive linemen. I'm not sure why. That's the one position we're struggling with. Elijah Pritchett's the one guy we brought in. When he came out of high school, 247 Sports had him as the number 1 offensive tackle in the entire country. Williams and Warray, Pritchett, Raiola, and there'll be a couple other guys on this list. Easily 3 of the top 5 or 3 of the most talented players, okay, on our roster. He's got to work out. He just flat out has to work out. He has to find that level of consistency. He can be great, but just start with being consistent. That's on Donovan Raiola to figure that out. We got to get more alignment in here, Coach Raiola, but we got to figure that out. And I'm rooting for you. I'm rooting for you. I'm just like, wow. The offensive line, honestly, was, for me, with all due respect, I thought we'd get more out of him last year. Probably the biggest, I don't want to say it. I was the most disappointed with the offensive line play as far as consistency the whole year of any position group on the team. Probably that in the secondary. We can't have that again. That's all I'm saying. All right. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm on X, Twitter, TikTok, which is now back. All right. Facebook, and Instagram. Those are the 4 places if you want to follow me on social media. And I do different things on different social media platforms too. TikTok and Instagram are mostly videos. Facebook and X are a lot of posts and pictures and things of that nature. All right, here are my questions for you fine folks at home. I've got 4. I got an extra one for you today. Do me a favor, just at least answer 2. Number 1, it helps with the algorithm. Number 2, I genuinely want to hear what you fine folks have to say. Now, we've had 31 players transfer from Nebraska away from the Huskers. 23 of them have found homes elsewhere at this point. We have the number 1 transfer portal class in the Big Ten, number 6 class in the country. All right. And we were tied for the largest transfer portal class in Nebraska football history at 16. Marquise Gross-Killebrew is no longer part of the class, so we're down to 15. So my first question is, will we get 17 or more transfer portal players by the time this class is all said and done next season, which would be the largest in Nebraska football history? You can just say yes or no. Number 2, who is your biggest portal impact player? Your number 1 portal impact player who's going to make the biggest impact. Number 3, would you rather we model our program after Ohio State style, try to just raise a bunch of NIL, or Notre Dame, which obviously they're doing NIL too, but build the program from the inside out with culture and toughness? One's a lot harder to do. They're both difficult. Number 4, again, I can't read my writing. Oh, why are we struggling to get offensive linemen in the portal? All right, until next time, go Big Red. And always remember, I'll see you next Tuesday, maybe before if there's a gut reaction. And I just found this shirt randomly in the closet, to throw the bones.